What route did you do? How much did it cost? Should I bring hiking poles? What was the weather like? How did you plan it? How did you navigate? What would you do differently? If you've been following along, then you'll know that I just finished walking the last 100 kilometers of the Portuguese Coastal Route on the Camino de Santiago. Since sharing that adventure, I've gotten some great questions from you all about the route, solo travel, logistics, and what would I do differently. So that's what we're going to cover today. We're just going to sit here and I'm going to answer all of the most asked questions and share all of the tips, lessons, and little things that I haven't had the chance to share in previous videos. If you're planning your own Camino or you're just curious what it's all about, then this video is for you. Let's get into it. Starting off with some quick fire questions. So, when did I start and where did I start? So I walked the final portion of the Portuguese Coastal Route, starting in a town called Vigo to Santiago de Compostela. The official numbers for that is 102 kilometers, which means you can do just that portion because it's over the threshold of 100 kilometers to get your Compostela at the end. I did track all of mine and I actually walked 108 kilometers, so just a little bit more. It was just over 200,000 steps and I chose to walk it over 6 days. If you follow the official stages of that, it is actually typically walked in 5 days, but I had the extra time, so I chose to break up my last day. So instead of doing a 27 kilometer day at the very end, I broke that into 2 roughly 14 kilometer days. And I started on the 17th of June 2025. Have I ever done something like this before? Yes and no. The closest thing I've done before is climbing Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania. So that is the only other multi-day trek hike experience that I've had. But the reason I say yes and no is because that felt entirely different. When you're doing Kilimanjaro, you have a team of porters and guides and chefs and a whole team of people around you, which is really what makes that experience so special. But that's obviously completely different to me walking the Camino solo, carrying my own stuff, figuring out my own accommodation, choosing my own food. So it's the closest thing I've done, but it really feels very, very different based on my experience. And what did I pack? Well, up here you can watch my full packing guide that I filmed before I actually did it. See the rundown of everything that I packed. And overall, I'm really happy with what I packed and how I packed. I don't have many regrets about it. But just to quickly touch on some things that I might change for next time. There was only 3 items in my bag that I didn't end up using. My raincoat, which I just got lucky there was no rain. I would definitely still pack that again because you never know, you don't want to be caught without one. The second one was a headlamp. I didn't really need it in the hostels because I wasn't waking up way before everybody else. And because I was there in summer, I wasn't starting in the dark in the morning. I sometimes started just before sunrise, but there was already enough light. I never actually needed to use my headlamp. And then the third thing was my tripod, which I already kind of knew ahead of time. I think I mentioned it in my packing guide video that I wasn't sure if I would use it, and not once did I pull it out of my backpack. One thing I would add for next time is some zinc oxide tape. I thought I already had some, so I didn't buy it, and then I couldn't find it in time to bring it with me, and that just would have been really nice to have for some blister prevention. It might have helped me on day one and might have prevented me getting those blisters straight off the bat, so I would make sure that I have some with me next time. And then the favorite items that I had with me were these 2 items that were very kindly gifted to me from Kathmandu. These 2 items that you will see me wearing every single day if you've watched my vlogs from the Camino. So it is this panel cap. And it's just the first time I've had a nice, really lightweight, packable cap like this. It didn't feel that it was making me any sweatier in the heat. It was just so handy to pop on and off and great for a little bit of sun protection. So I really liked it. And also for sun protection, my sun hoodie from Kathmandu. This is my first time using a sun hoodie and I have been converted. It is now one of my favorite pieces of kit, just to have that built-in sun protection, not have to be reapplying sun cream. And with the hood, you can put it on up over while you have the hat on as well, and give you that little bit of extra shade and sun protection. So big fan. They're 2 of my favorite pieces of kit for all hiking from here on out. Now, some more of your questions that I did get through DMs and comments, and I put a question box up on Instagram, so thank you to everyone who sent in questions. One that I did get a few times is, how much did it cost? So I went into this wanting to do the Camino on as tight of a budget as possible. So I do think that there's a whole range. You could spend as much money as you want to for whatever added comforts you want to add in, but I was keeping it to as tight a budget as possible. So I've done some calculations. On my accommodation, I stayed in hostels for the whole time, and it was a mix of public albergues and private albergues. So the public albergues are only €10 a night, and the private ones I paid between 18 and 24, and 24 was for my very first night in Santiago before I got the train out to Vigo and started the next morning. So that came to a total of €101, which is obviously super cheap. For transport then, I paid €25 for a taxi from the airport to Santiago de Compostela. I paid €16 for a train from Santiago to Vigo, and then €1 only for the airport bus back to the airport when I was leaving. So that's a total of €42 for transport. And then the remaining spending is kind of hard for me to estimate because I didn't actually track it live throughout the days, and I took out cash at home ahead of time and spent mostly cash. So it's hard for me to know exactly how much I spent, but my best estimate is for food, drinks, souvenirs, and whatever other little bits I picked up each day. I spent between €30 and €40 a day. So that brings my total overall to somewhere between €320 and €380, which I think is a pretty good budget. Obviously, the only thing I haven't included there was my flights over, because that will depend and vary quite a lot depending on where you're flying from, what time of year, and if you are lucky enough to get cheap flights. I just kept an eye and looked for the cheapest dates for flights that I could find because my dates were flexible. So I think I paid about €160 from Dublin to Santiago. As I said, your budget for the Camino could vary so much depending on what you want to spend your money on. If you want to book all of your accommodations in advance, if you want to stay in private rooms, if you want to get nice hotels, if you want swimming pools, if you want food included, if you want to eat out at restaurants every day. I had some like very, very cheap supermarket meals sometimes, which you'll see in my vlogs as well. So that's how I kept that number really nice and low. The next one is, how did I plan and navigate my route? So planning the route ahead of time was kind of daunting. I didn't really know where to start. It kind of turns out that it's very go with the flow. So don't stress about it too much before you get there. I did use 2 different apps to help me with this. So I used Buen Camino and Camino Ninja. Both of them are great and they both kind of did different things for me. So I used Camino Ninja more ahead of time to help me plan how long I would walk each day and where I would stop. So that app is great for that. It can give you the exact kilometers for every little section between each town, so you know exactly where you want to walk to, where you want to stop. It'll also it has a little icon to let you know if there's food available there, if there's accommodation, and it does have information on the accommodation in each town, so you can see where the public albergues are and how much they cost. And then while I was actually on the Camino, I did use the app Buen Camino much more frequently because that has a more detailed map to show you. It also has the route profile to show you the elevation gain, so I did refer to that quite a bit to see where the next hill was, and it also has information on accommodation. I did come across a couple discrepancies between the 2 apps, so it was helpful to have both of them to get the most information possible of where there was a public albergue and where there wasn't, so that I could use that to help me decide when I was going to stop and where I was going to stay. But for the actual day-to-day navigation, you don't really need to refer to a map or your phone or an app or anything. You can just navigate based on the signs that are there on the trail. There's the stone pillars with the signs, blue signs on the wall with the yellow shell and the yellow arrow, and there's also just yellow arrows spray painted on random walls, stones, back of road signs to let you know when you need to turn. It's very easy to navigate, and if you're walking at the same time of day as other pilgrims, you'll likely be able to just follow whoever's walking in front of you. Navigation was really, really easy throughout the whole thing. The only time it got a little bit more difficult is when you were in bigger towns. So when I started in Vigo, it was a little bit more overwhelming because in the town there's so much more going on. There's all the different signs of all the different shops, so it's harder sometimes to spot where the yellow arrow is. So I did use my phone then, but you would still manage totally fine without your phone or a map. And honestly, I think it's more fun that way, to not be looking at your phone the whole time. Did you use a travel company or book yourself? Especially in Ireland, it seems going with a group through a travel company is becoming more and more popular. And I think it would be really lovely to do it that way sometime, to have the group of people that you're walking with. But because my Camino was kind of planned quite last minute, it was very spontaneous, and once I had booked my flights, my dates were set, there were no group trips that I could join, so I just planned it all myself. And I quite wanted to just travel solo for it, so I did it, planned it all entirely myself. And because I was going down the hostel route, it's very easy to do because you just show up and start walking on day 1, and you really only need to have one night's accommodation planned at a time. So the public albergues, you can't book ahead, it's first come, first served. So if I was planning to go to one of them, I would just walk early in the morning and not stop as often so that I can get there nice and early. Check-in is from about 1 o'clock typically. So you want to get there before 1. And then there's like a queue system. People leave their backpacks in a row and the order that they showed up. And that's the queue for who gets to go into the hostel first. And I never had any issues getting into a public albergue. And when I wasn't staying in a public albergue, I would book my hostel through booking.com the night before. And there was no issues with availability for that either. And that does answer my last question. How did I choose and book accommodation? So I used the apps to find what accommodation was going to be available in my next town. And then if it was public albergue, I would show up and hope to get a bed. If it was a private albergue, I would book it the night before. So I did get a question about the Wi-Fi on the route. With an EU SIM like I had free EU roaming. I had data on my phone the whole time and phone signal was never really an issue. I don't think. Not that I experienced anyway. And everywhere I stayed had Wi-Fi. I don't think there's really much of an issue in these days about finding Wi-Fi along the route. Again, that's just the route I did, the Portuguese Coastal Route. Other routes might be harder. I think some of the routes are still less popular. The accommodation may not have these same facilities, but that should be information you could find out ahead of time. Even the public albergues in the app, it has some information about what is and isn't included in them, like whether they include sheets, whether they have a kitchenette you can use, if they have laundry facilities. The apps have that information, so it'll also tell you if there's Wi-Fi or not. Are hiking poles needed? So I think this is a good question. I think in general, hiking poles are a bit of a personal preference, whether you enjoy using them or not. I have used them only a handful of times, but it's something that I think I would like to get into the habit of using more. So I would have liked to have had them for the Camino, but I flew over with cabin luggage only, carry-on luggage. So I wasn't able to bring my hiking poles because you can't bring them in your carry-on luggage. You'd have to check them in. So I didn't bring mine, and I thought that maybe in the first day or two I might come across hiking poles that had been left in a hostel that I'd be able to rent, buy, and bring them with me until the end, but that didn't happen. I also kind of forgot about it, so I wasn't really looking out for them. So I didn't use them, and I think based on my experience from what I saw, I would say it's like less than 50% of people that use the poles, or I did see a lot of people walking with the poles attached to their bag, not actively using them. But I think it really is a personal preference. The terrain is not difficult in a way that would mean you'd really want to have them with you. So it's more just, do you enjoy walking with them? Do you appreciate how it helps you with your posture? Maybe it would help with the weight of a backpack, that kind of thing. But yeah, I think personal preference. Then a couple questions on what would I do differently. The first one, the main thing that comes to mind is I would do my day one very differently. I would not get a train to my starting point and start walking on the same day, because it meant I was walking way too late into the afternoon. It was too hot. Heat wave that day as well, 36 degrees. It absolutely killed me. I think it tired me out so much more than if I'd been able to start earlier in the day and miss some of that heat. So I would instead plan that little bit of extra buffer time for your starting point so you can arrive at the town the night before, stay there, and then start walking nice and early first thing in the morning. But if you are really tight for time, you may not have that choice. But that's something I will definitely do differently next time. And really the only other thing that I would do differently is I would do a longer Camino. It felt too short. It was over before I knew it. So I would just choose a longer route so I could spend more time on it and enjoy it more. Ideally at some point I would love to do an entire route start to finish, like the entire French route. That would be fantastic. It's just about finding the time to do that, because it obviously takes a number of weeks. And the very last question, have I decided on my next Camino yet? Yes, is kind of the answer. If you don't know, Ireland has a number of Celtic Camino routes, some of which are officially recognised as a portion of your Camino de Santiago. So you can walk a portion here, fly to Spain and finish it to Santiago. So I may be planning to do one of those little portions soon, really close by to where I am. Maybe leave your guesses in the comments if you think you know what Celtic Camino that I might do next. Or maybe I'll do them all. We'll see. So I hope that was helpful and that I answered most of your questions. If I did miss any, leave them in the comments below and I'll get back to everybody there. And if you haven't already, make sure you go back and watch the other videos in my Camino playlist, including the packing guide that I mentioned and the 2-part vlog series of my whole adventure. Don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe if you would like more of this travel, hiking, slow adventure content. Buen Camino. I hope you have a joyful week and I'll catch you in the next adventure.